I lived on a farm out in Iowa. I pulled the corn and I worked in the hay. Got trapped by a girl, but I wiggled free. Heard the Oregon timber calling me.
Grist mills met one of the most basic needs of the early settlers. They provided flour for the baking of bread. Unlike the gatherer-hunter diets of the natives at the time, the settler relied on bread as a staple in their diets. So this video is going to look at the settlement of the Pacific Northwest, the impact of transportation on settlers, the effects on the indigenous peoples, and how the grist mills supported them. We have chosen a handful of grist mills to highlight. There have been nearly 100 flour mills in eastern Washington alone. Florence Scherfy has written the book Eastern Washington's Vanished Grist Mills and the Men Who Ran Them, and she lists 79 grist mills by 1900. At first, a mill was a necessity for the neighboring farmers, as it had been throughout the country. Every farm community needed a mill within horse and wagon distance, so that the annual crop could be milled into flour. A grist mill works by using the force of water or wind to rotate large stones, grinding grain into flour or meal. Grist mills typically utilize water power, using a water wheel or turbine to generate rotational motion. In some cases, windmills were used, employing wind to turn the stones. Two large, heavy stones are used, a stationary bedstone and a rotating runner stone. The runner stone is connected to the power source via gears and a spindle, causing it to rotate. Grooves are carved into both stones to guide the grain and create a shearing action. Grain is fed into a central hole in the runner stone. As the runner stone rotates, the grain is sheared and crushed between the two stones. Centrifugal force helps to move the ground grain outwards, where it's collected in a spout. The initial grinding process produces a mixture of flour, middlings, shorts, and bran. The ground grain is then sifted to separate these components, creating different types of flour or meal. The final product is collected in sacks or bins for storage and distribution. Grist mills were incredibly important to early settlers, primarily because they allowed farmers to process their harvested grain into flour, which was essential for survival and a key component of their diet. Without mills, settlers would have faced significant challenges in producing enough food to sustain their communities. Grist mills were not just places to grind grain. They also served as gathering places for farmers and other community members. People would come to the mill to grind their grain, transact business, barter goods, and socialize. Many mills became the centers of growing communities, with houses, shops, and other businesses developing around them. Farmers could sell or trade the flour produced at the mill, contributing to the development of local markets and economies. Millers themselves often became important figures in the community, potentially holding political offices or owning significant land. Access to a nearby grist mill encouraged farmers to plant more crops and expand their land, leading to increased agricultural production. The ability to quickly and efficiently process grain into flour meant that farmers could spend more time cultivating and harvesting crops rather than manually grinding them. Early mills were water-powered, relying on the natural force of rivers and streams to drive the grinding stones. The development and refinement of milling technology played a crucial role in increasing the efficiency and output of these essential structures. The need for grist mills logically follows the populations of settlers. Between 1818 and 1846, both the British and United States laid claim to the Pacific Northwest. It was governed under a provisional government and was called the Oregon Country. The many tribes of indigenous Indians populated the land. The Europeans were mostly fur traders. Fur traders were not the same as settlers in that they did not come to establish permanent towns and farms or to dispossess Indians from their lands. But the land-based fur trade did lay the foundations for settlement that ensued in the Pacific Northwest and Western Canada after 1840. Manifest destiny was the controversial belief that the United States was preordained to expand from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific coast, and efforts made to realize that belief. As the nation grew, Manifest Destiny became a rallying cry for expansionists in the Democratic Party. In the 1840s, Tyler and Polk administrations successfully promoted this nationalistic doctrine. The Great Migration of 1843 opened the Pacific Northwest to the white settlers by way of the Oregon Trail. The Oregon Trail was a roughly 2,000-mile route from Independence, Missouri, to Oregon City, Oregon, that was used by hundreds of thousands of American pioneers in the mid-1800s to emigrate west. The trail was arduous and snaked through Missouri and present-day Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, Idaho, and finally into Oregon. Without the Oregon Trail and the passing of the Oregon Donation Land Act in 1850, which encouraged settlement in the Oregon Territory, American pioneers would have been slower to settle the American West in the 19th century. Determined to spread Christianity to American Indians on the frontier, Dr. and Protestant missionary Marcus Whitman, set heading west, met up with a huge wagon train destined for Oregon. The group included 120 wagons, about 1,000 people, and thousands of livestock. Their trek began on May 22nd and lasted 5 months.
When the heart grows cold, but grant, oh grant, this wish to me, bury me not on the lone prairie, oh, bury me not.
The grist mill, which provided flour for bread, was a key element in being able to feed the influx of people. Fort Vancouver established one of the first water-powered grist mill in the Oregon country in 1839. The abundant flow of water, the abrupt drop, and proximity to Fort Vancouver were the reasons the Hudson Bay Company chose the Mill Creek site. The water-powered mill was an upgrade from the horse or mule power they had used since 1828. At the time the grist mill was completed, the grain was hand-planted, hand-cut, flailed by hand, and tossed into the air, so the wind could blow the chaff away. Then it was ground between the burst stones. A slow, tedious process to get a little flour. In 1846, the Oregon Treaty was signed between the United States and Britain. This treaty established a 49th parallel as a boundary with the north going to Britain and the south to the United States. This treaty also allowed the government to be established as the Oregon Territory. At about the same time, the Oregon Provisional Legislature allowed Jesse and Lindsay Applegate to attempt to find a more southerly route to Oregon. The Applegate Trail was established as a safer way to get to the Oregon Territory. Fort Colville, located near Kettle Falls, was established by the British Hudson's Bay Company in 1825. In 1830, a French Canadian named Lapierre built the area's first grist mill at a location on the Colville River, now known as Myers Falls. According to historian William S. Lewis, this mill was rebuilt in the early 1840s by Chief Factor Archibald MacDonald. The Canada-U.S. border was established on the 49th parallel. With this, the British-owned Hudson Bay Company found themselves in U.S. territory and subject to tariffs when shipping goods to and from Canada. To alleviate the situation, the HBC moved their operations to a new post just north of the border at Fort Shepherd, leaving the grist mill behind. In the valley of present-day Clackamas County, the grist mill's principal task was to convert wheat to flour, and by 1851 the valley was producing a great deal of wheat. Flour was even shipped by pack train to the gold mines of southern Oregon in the 1850s. In addition to soft wheat from nearby farms, the mill ground hard spring wheat brought in from eastern Oregon. The California gold rush was in the height of its madness in 1850. The Applegate Trail reversed its direction and was used by many to go from the Oregon Territory to the mines of California. In 1851, the Mulino flour mill was built. The mill was sited on the oxbow of swift-running Mill Creek. A dam was built across the creek to feed water into a fast-moving channel known as the Mill Race. Water in the race turned the water wheel and provided the power to turn the burrs. The stone burrs came from New York State, sailing around Cape Horn and packed in by wagon to Mulino. The plain, rectangular mill building is framed with hewn wooden posts set on a wooden sill. Several additions, similarly sided, were made about 1890, including the loading dock, with a second story supported by wooden beams, and a shed-roofed annex serving as a Mulino post office. Indigenous peoples in 1855, the sovereign nations of the Walla Walla, Umatilla, and Cayuse secured a reservation of 510,000 acres in northeastern Oregon. Through the Walla Walla, Cayuse, and Umatilla Treaty of June 9, 1855, the tribes lost 6.4 million acres of land and billions of dollars in resources. When government surveyors marked the land, they included only 245,000 acres within the reservation boundaries, a source of future land issues. In 1860, gold was discovered within the boundaries of the Nez Perce Reservation. Rather than stop the newcomers from trespassing on reservation land, the U.S. government instead initiated another treaty council that would shrink the 1855 reservation by 90%, claiming over 5 million acres. As the number of settlers increased in the Washington Territory in the mid-1800s, the United States wanted to ensure land was available for settlement. Isaac Stevens, the first governor and superintendent of Indian Affairs of the Washington Territory, was authorized by the United States to negotiate with Washington tribal nations for the peaceful settlement of their traditional lands. Stevens ultimately negotiated 8 treaties with tribes in what would become Washington. The treaties established or promised reservations for the exclusive use of the tribes. In addition, the tribal nations reserved their right to continue traditional activities on lands beyond these reserved areas. The Walla Walla Council was a watershed in Oregon's history, and it triggered a major war between many Oregon and Washington tribes and the government. Over time, the Umatilla Reservation became the homeland of several diverse tribes. The Walla Walla Council and the treaty that created the reservation have significant implications today for the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, guaranteeing the tribe's legal status and its government-to-government relationship with the United States. Along with the influx of people came additional mills. In 1853, Kings Valley Mill was built. This is one of the first millstones, or burrs, to be used in this section of Oregon. Originally quarried in France and shipped around the Horn from New York in 1850 by sailing vessel. In 1852, they were transported by oxen team from Portland to Kings Valley and set up and operated by Roland Chambers on the banks of the Lackawanna River as one of the first 3 grist mills in the state. This stone was in constant use for over 60 years. Many of the children and grandchildren of the Kings Valley homesteaders still live in this area. The Territory of Washington was an organized, incorporated territory of the United States on March 2, 1853. It was created from the portion of the Oregon Territory north of the lower Columbia River and north of the 46th parallel east of the Columbia. At its largest extent, it also included the entirety of modern Idaho and parts of Montana and Wyoming, before attaining its final boundaries in 1863. In 1858, Miller R.C. Finley, with partners Philemon Crawford and Alexander Brandon, built the Boston Mills. They sold flour to neighboring farmers and to miners traveling south to the gold fields. The partners channeled the Calpuia's water power with a complex hydro system of 3 dams, a mill race head gates, and a flume and turbines. The mill operated solely on energy from its water plant until 1941. The water system is still fully functional. The town of Boston, located behind the present millkeeper's house, was platted in 1861. By 1869, it boasted a post office, 2 general stores, and a blacksmith shop. In 1871, the town disappeared virtually overnight when the Oregon and California Railroad laid track and shed. Today, there is no trace of the town. Boston Mill survived by transporting its flour to the railroad station and shed. By 1880, the mill was processing oats, corn, and barley, as well as wheat, and selling its flour conglomerates in Portland. Martin Thompson assumed full ownership and updated the mill's equipment, installing steel roller mills and increasing quality and production. When Thompson died in 1910, Sophia Thompson and their sons Otto and Leo inherited the mill and changed its name to Thompson's Flouring Mills. They packaged and sold flour under the names Valley Rose, Thompson's Best, and Cream of the Valley. In 1917, Ott Thompson added 450-foot concrete silos, which allowed the mill to operate all year long by storing hard winter wheat from eastern Oregon. During World War I, the mill operated 24 hours a day in order to sell flour to the United States Food Administration, which administered famine relief in Europe. Today, the 20-acre site includes a 6th-floor, 23,000-square-foot mill, the Queen Anne House, a carriage house, a hay barn, a service bay, and a garage shop are all open to the public as a state park. Oregon became the 33rd state in 1859. During the Civil War, Southerners who had settled in the timber-producing areas along the southwestern coast of the state threatened secession. To placate these potential rebels, free blacks were constitutionally forbidden from entering Oregon, and only a handful of them migrated there before the late 19th century, when exclusion law was relaxed, although it was not formally repealed until 1926. 1865 was a pivotal year in American history. With the end of the Civil War, Lincoln's assassination, and the beginning of Reconstruction, politics were forever changed. Lives were changed, too, with the completion of the first transcontinental railroad in Utah in 1869. Westward wagon trains decreased significantly as settlers chose a faster and more reliable mode of transportation. In 1872, on the west bank of Little Butte Creek, John W. Daly, Sr. and Eber Emery began construction of the Butte Creek Mill in July 1872. The building was situated on a fairly steep bank on the west side of the creek. An old irrigation ditch on the site was dug deeper by horse and hand labor. Emery and Daly's attentions then turned to the installation of the millstones, weighing a substantial 1,400 pounds each. These formidable stones were procured from France, meticulously assembled in Illinois, and embarked on an arduous journey. They traveled by ship down the Mississippi, circumnavigated Chile, and finally arrived at the coast of California. They were transported by ox cart to their final destination in Eagle Point, Oregon. The landscape shifted with the entrance of competition, as a separate consortium of investors endeavored to establish a rival flour mill just down the road. Yet, as the Snowy Butte Mill underwent enhancements, notably with the substitution of its original millstones with advanced rollers, the competing investors swiftly discerned the futility of their challenge. Recognizing the superior efficiency and quality of the Snowy Butte Mill, they gracefully conceded defeat, relinquishing their pursuit. The original millstones and equipment, however, were kept in storage. The Snowy Butte Mill closed, and ownership of the property shifted to the Eagle Point Bank, marking the onset of a prolonged period of dormancy. For a span of 12 years, the once bustling mill lay dormant, its machinery silent, awaiting a new chapter in its storied history. With a keen sense of tradition and a vision for authenticity, George Putman embarked on a transformative endeavor within the mill's confines. Striving to honor its heritage, he dismantled the modern roller units, reverting the mill to its original state as a grist mill adorned with the timeless allure of millstones. This restoration not only breathed new life into the structure, but also reinstated its pivotal role in the local community. As a side note, stone ground flour milled between traditional stone discs retains more of the German brand, preserving essential nutrients and offering a richer, nuttier flavor. In contrast, roller mill flour, processed at higher speeds and temperatures, can lose vital nutrients and flavor. Coarser flours like stone ground flour typically have a lower glycemic index compared to more finely milled flours. The glycemic index measures how quickly foods raise blood sugar levels, and foods with lower GI are digested and absorbed more slowly, leading to a more gradual increase in blood sugar. Beginning in the 1880s, new waves of immigrants came to Oregon from Italy, Greece, Russia, Hungary, and Poland. By 1890, 37% of Portland residents had been born outside the United States, the second highest percentage among major West Coast cities. Many of the new immigrants gravitated to specific occupations, Germans and British to urban jobs, Swedes to logging and mill work in places such as Coos Bay, Italians to truck farms, Finns to Astoria and the booming fishing industry, and Danes to towns such as Junction City, where they raised grain crops or operated dairies. After years of delays and financial troubles, the Northern Pacific Railway opened the first transcontinental route into the Pacific Northwest in 1883, initially via the Oregon Railway and Navigation Company. It would not gain a direct route to Puget Sound until 1888. In 1890, the railroads had all but eliminated the need to journey thousands of miles in a covered wagon. Settlers from the east were more than happy to hop on a train and arrive in the west in 1 week, instead of 6 months. So that's our journey through the settlement of the Pacific Northwest, the impacts of transportation, the effects on the indigenous peoples, and the development of the grist mill that supported them. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something along the way. A tale of the
You work
Pacific
in the woods
Northwest.
from morning to night. You laugh and sing and you cuss and fight. On Saturday night you go to Eugene. And on a Sunday morning your pockets are clean. Will you tell me something, Mr. Lumberjack? Is it 1 for forward and 3 for back? Is it 2 for stop or 4 for go? Boy, ask a whistle punk. I don't know.